ICQ Podcast, episode 429, Marconi Day Fun. Well, hello fellow amateur radio enthusiasts, and welcome to this our 429th episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast, supported this episode by our monthly and annual subscription donors. In this episode, we join Martin M1MRB, Chris Mike Zero Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin Mike Zero Sierra Golf Lima, Frank Kilo 4 Foxtrot Mike Hotel, Bill Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, and Leslie Golf Zero Charlie India Bravo to discuss latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6BOA, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is Marconi Day Fun. Well, as always, it's our very kind monthly and subscription donors that help us pay our way and keep your ICQ podcast advert free. We would like you to find if you have value in today's show and send back that value to us by visiting icqpodcast.com/donate, where you can express your value to us in a monetary figure that helps pay our way for you and, as I say, keeps your show on the air advert free. So please do consider visiting that website after today's show. Right, well, now we're going to join Martin, Chris, Martin, Frank, Bill and Leslie to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur radio news, including MFJ to cease trading and California Club to be homeless. As always, hope you enjoy.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to ICQ Podcast episode 429 and this week's News Roundtable. Tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Martin, and hello to everybody else waiting in the wings.
Yeah, hiya. We've also got Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL. How you doing?
Hello.
Yeah, going to get me in trouble tonight.
Get yourself in trouble. That would be Mr. Coffee that helps you with that.
Oh, yes, I forgot about him.
We just ordered another triple shot espresso.
Yeah.
Let's have that delivered.
But don't tell Carol.
We'll order where I want to.
Yeah. Right, let's move to the other side of the pond. Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH. Hi, Frank.
Hey, Martin. Hey, everybody. Good to be here this week.
Yeah, good to have you as always. And still at your side of the pond is Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Martin. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, good. And as I said to you the other day, and you toned your conversation down this, but I saw a picture of your lovely lady and your two twins, and I thought, they've grown up. I'm still visualising them as about 3 or 4. And but life moves on quick, doesn't it, Bill?
Yes, kids tend to grow.
Yeah, I should know. Colin's mine. He's, 48 this year? Oh, dear. Anyway, let's move on. Oh, and last but not least, he's back by popular demand over here in the UK. So, Leslie, G0CIB.
Oh, thank you, Martin. Much appreciated. I'm just dunking something in my tea here at the moment, but it's good to be back again.
Yeah. Will you behave yourself what you're dunking those teas? Because I think sometimes you dunk some strange stuff. But yeah, okay. Oh, dear. Right, let's move to our first news story. MFJ ceases on-site production. And there's been a hell of a lot on social media and all over the internet about this. Martin Dew, K5FLU, has decided he's going to retire. And I think, good on him. I've met a gentleman. He's a lovely gentleman. But if you're in your 80s, why shouldn't you just enjoy the rest of life and not take all the pressure? Frank, I'm going to put it over to you first because you're a good friend of Martin Dew, aren't you?
I am, and I began as a customer in 1979 as a shortwave listener long before I got licensed as a ham. And I've had the privilege to get to know Martin and become a good friend. My wife and Betty, his wife, and I, we have gone to different social events and things like that, and I've gotten to know Martin's family on occasion. So it's this is kind of a bittersweet moment for me because as a friend, I see Martin at a point where he wants to sort of enjoy the rest of his life and get to know family that is now scattered across the country. His daughter, Deanna, lives in Atlanta. She's married and has 2 children. She is a technician. She got her tech license only to surprise her father as a birthday gift. And so his brother Henry just recently left Hollandale, Mississippi, which is where the Jew family lived and grew up, and he moved to Houston. And I've gotten to know Henry over the years as well. So Martin's had, like the rest of his family, that's kind of scattered. And he's 80. He had a heart attack about 10 years ago. He's had some serious eye surgery that was very successful. And Martin found the guy that invented the machine, and he's in Memphis. He went up to talk to the doctor in Memphis who invented the machine that will be doing the eye surgery. If you know Martin Jew, you know that's just like Martin to get to the bottom of it before they started working on him. So Martin is looking forward to retiring. There's been a lot of slightly and perhaps unintentional misinformation you see on YouTube and elsewhere. MFJ closing. Well, that's not true. They are closing their manufacturing production lines on May 17th. And they will continue to sell the OEM products that get MFJ put on them. They will still be selling those. And they will be continue to sell in-stock items, as well as their resellers will sell their in-stock items. They will also continue to do support. Now, think for a moment, you've got a certain warranty period. Just pick any random product. Let's say it has a 1-year warranty. Well, you're sort of obligated to provide some support for that warranty. And Martin plans to do that. So there will be some sunset date when the last sell-by date product, is benchmarked that would probably end that support. I think Gigaparts has said they will handle some product support for things produced by MFJ, but sold by Gigaparts if they're authenticated. So I would just caution our listeners just to be careful about looking only at headlines and maybe look at what's going on. Now, why is this happening? Well, Martin has had his company for sale for about a year and had a broker in Dallas who was trying to sell the company for him very quietly, and there was a potential buyer in Boston whose owner was a ham. But he had a chief operating officer who's convinced that ham radio as a market was dying. And I was a consultant to that company and did a market report. And there's absolutely no evidence that the ham radio market in the U.S. is dying. But that chief operating officer held sway, and that company took a walk, from that potential purchase. There have been some tire kickers, as Martin has told me, but nobody who's been serious. And if you talk to any companies out there their salespeople said, yeah, we tried to buy the company. Not really. It was pennies on the dollar, not anything serious. So the company is for sale, whether in whole or in part. But again, why are we here? And there's a pretty simple answer, and Martin put it in his letter. And I have met with Martin about every 3 months for a number of years, and I'd meet with staff there in Starkville, and Martin and I would have lunch and talk about business and that sort of thing. So I've got a pretty good idea. When COVID hit, Martin lost half of his employees. Now, this is a small town, it's a university town, Starkville, Mississippi. MFJ is probably the second largest employer in town. It's one of the largest, it may be the second largest private employer. So, they're a place that hires a lot of people. But half of his employees left. Part of it was due to government support, and they could make money by not working. Why work? So you had that situation. You had the vice president, Stephen Pan, who was a student at Mississippi State and took classes from Martin when Martin was a professor there on campus. And Stephen had been with the company as vice president ever since the beginning. Well, Stephen had some illness himself and finally decided to retire and move over to Huntsville, Alabama, where his kids were located. And so your vice president, who handled parts ordering, who handled scheduling of Hamfest and things, suddenly he's out of the picture. You also had the former director of Ameritron, Mike Enos, became the shop floor manager. He's the one who made sure products got produced, quality assurance, and things like that dealt with. And Mike Enos passed away suddenly, a licensed ham for a long time, truly an expert on Ameritron amplifiers. Other than Tom Roush, I know of no one, Tom, who designed some of those amplifiers. I know of no one who knew more about Ameritron amps than Mike Enos. Mike died after 10 days of onset of COVID. So here you got your VP and your shop floor manager out of the picture. So Martin had to go back to the manufacturing shop floor as president and run the business, literally the production business. And Martin became tired, and it was very difficult to hire people to come to Starkville. You think, well, gee, some electrical engineering students would just jump to go to work there. One might think that, but if you know many young people today, Bill, maybe you can talk about that since you work, in the university setting yourself. And I did some studies on this when I was at the College Board office in Atlanta for the University of Georgia, or the system in Georgia, not just the University of Georgia, but all 35 campuses. Young people want to go to cities. They want to go where there's stuff, there's a nightlife, there's creative things, and it's just not easy to recruit engineers to a small town, even if it's where their alma mater is located. So after several years of that, I think it kind of wore Martin down. Company's still for sale, and what will happen, I don't really know what will happen. But I hope that sort of clarifies, some of the perhaps unintentional misinformation that's out there in social media. For me, I'm partly happy that my good friend is going to enjoy his retirement as I'm enjoying mine. So I have very mixed feelings. If you want to buy something from MFJ, you better buy it yesterday rather than today, because as they say on television, late night TV, when it's gone, it's gone. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, thanks for that, Frank. And as I say, you introduced me to Martin Dew of MFJ in 2019. Lovely gentleman. Very, very nice to talk to. And I don't blame him wanting to enjoy life, take the pressure off and enjoy life. Bill, your side of the pond, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it was surprising news somewhat. I mean, once again, they've been in business a very, very long time, and I hope he has a really good retirement. And unlike a lot of people, like Frank said, did a lot of speculation online. You don't know unless you're there. So I just immediately ignored all the speculation and that kind of stuff. And we'll see if anything official comes out, if they're going to find somebody to buy the company or if they're just going to sunset. But it's okay. Either way, it's okay. I mean, we've had, what was it, Frank, 52 years?
Yeah.
52 years of them as a vendor. I have a stack of MFJ, the TNC2 clones that they made here. I got, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 of them back in the back of the closet here that, ran packet radio for me for over 15 years. So they, it was a good device and a good price. So I'm just glad he's able to retire, actually, because he exactly what he said in his email. He's been working a very long time and he wasn't planning on retiring, but it's good that he's actually going to take advantage of that.
Well, I think so, Bill. I think so, in fairness. And I don't think there's many amateurs or ham radio operators that don't have a piece of MFJ equipment. I think I counted the other day when I was talking to Frank, 5 or 6. I think it was 6 items. But, they do what they say on the tin. And in fairness, MFJ made a lot of things that other people just didn't make. So if you wanted something a bit specialised, you looked in the MFJ catalogue. Leslie, what's your thoughts?
Martin, you're absolutely right. I mean, where else could you have bought equipment like that? On the other bits that Frank's talking about with the COVID, I think it is very, very understandable with what's occurred, and people start to have recess or a reset in their life, and just look at things and go, no, he's done more, he's done a lot, he's done more than his stint, and it's time for him to put his feet up and enjoy life and his family. And I wish him the very, very best. One of the other things that caught my eye was that I understand that he's been in 52 years, and in his letter he mentioned about employees staying with him a long time. That's a sign of a good company. When people are staying with you for that long, that's a good sign you're doing something right. So I applaud him for that. So, Mr. Joe, enjoy your retirement. You've earned it.
Yeah, I think that's fairly straightforward. Chris, what's your thoughts on this one? You was with me when I met Martin, weren't you? I think you was part of the crew.
I was in the area, yeah. I was just amazed. I mean, obviously, the first thing is amazing company, not just MFJ, but all the subsidiaries, Ameritron, Highgain, etc., Cushcraft are all part of the MFJ family. So it's a real, big, probably, in terms of people, I think pretty much every amateur probably owns something from one of the MFJ companies, I imagine. I mean, I have an MFJ tuner in the shack and other kit, no doubt, from their range of companies. Prolific manufacturer of amateur radio equipment. So, there'll be a big loss. And yes, when I was over in Dayton in 2019 with yourself, Martin, and the other guys that were there, the MFJ stand at Dayton is absolutely huge, and the range of products that MFJ manufacture and sell is massive. I would be surprised if there's any other manufacturer in the amateur radio world that produces such a diverse range of products as MFJ and, like I say, and the other companies that are part of that group. So a real shame that they're shutting shop, so to speak. As per the comments from Frank earlier, talking about the view that maybe amateur radio isn't as big as it was. I was actually reading earlier on Facebook. So ICOM put out something on Facebook today saying that their ICOM IC 7300, which is one of their sort of HF, their SDR HF transceiver, is now sold over 100,000 units globally. So that's a lot of radios. I would say that the amateur radio business is actually thriving, and it's a real shame that we're losing one of our manufacturers, or one of our group of manufacturers. So, yeah, that's it from me, Martin.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Martin, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, just to what Chris said, 100,000 units globally on one particular radio, when you take into account that other manufacturers exist as well that are also selling vast quantities of their radio, I think that tells you all you need to know about the amateur radio, how well it's doing. I looked at this and I never realised how many brands that MFJ had. And I read through, I've got multiple things that they make, and I just thought, okay, I've got this MFJ unit here. I didn't realise all the other stuff that I've got is made by the same company. I read the email when it came out. It came out on our Work Amateur Radio group as well. I saw the thing that said that they never really sort of recovered from COVID. And that, when I read that, I was a bit surprised because I thought surely more people were at home playing with radio because they weren't going into work and things like that. Maybe more people, I honestly thought MFJ and people like that would have done better. But I'm listening to what Frank says. I understand what's going on. The guy's worked, all his life. He obviously deserves his retirement. It's sad to see the end. I know that there were some people that weren't particularly kind about some of the MFJ products. They, you go and you ask, what do you think of this? There are people that love them. There are people that don't have nice things to say about them. But, I've got MFJ stuff and I genuinely have nothing bad to say to them. They were quality products. They definitely had a place in the market. And there were some really niche things that they make. And it's like, it'll be sad that they disappear. Be sad if no one buys it, no one takes up the reins. But if MFJ doesn't get bought, maybe there'll be another manufacturer that will step in and say, hey, we can make that and we can do that. But I'm glad to see that they're honouring warranties and things like that, because that would be a bit sad if you bought something that needed warranty service for any reason and you had nowhere to go. So it's nice to see that they're at least honouring that.
Yeah, all copy. Well, I think it's pretty fair to say Mr. Jew, Martin Jew of MFJ, the owner, we all wish you on this podcast a happy retirement. Go and do some of the things, the family things you want to do. Go and do the other things you want to do. You've served us well for years, and we will miss your products when they cease to being made. But the more important thing is,
Martin, let me add this. He told me he looks forward to being able to get on the air. And let me just remind our listeners, Martin's middle name, Martin F. Jew, is Fun. So I hope he has what his middle name says, Fun.
Well, there you go, Frank. I didn't know that. And yeah, Martin, have lots of fun and enjoy your life, mate. You've done more than enough for amateur radio. Move to our next news story. A revised amateur radio examination syllabus has been released by the Radio Society of Great Britain. Leslie, do you want to go first on this one?
Why not, Martin? It's to be expected. I mean, there's been changes in the licence, and so the licensing conditions have been changed, and obviously the exams got to be changed, and the syllabus and everything else, and all the teaching methods, all the teaching stuff, and all that. That's a change as well. So this happens now and again, and I think they're going to carry on the present thing for a little while, and then it'll be all the new stuff will come in. So it does take a little while to bed in, but this happens, and it's just a case of the tutors being on board to the changes.
Certainly is on this one. Well, as I say, there have been quite a few changes because we've spoken about this on the podcast. Martin, what's your thoughts?
I was just looking through this. They said that the new licensing regulations came out 3 weeks. It seems like longer ago that we were looking at this. I didn't realise it was only 3 weeks. And you know, I've said this to me. Leslie explained it to me off the air, but it never. This is to me is something that should have been well ahead of this. You know, as far as I'm concerned, they're 3 weeks late to the party. This should have been before the licenses, the new licensing guidelines were announced. This should have been a behind-the-scenes conversation before it happens. I know there are politics. I know they're all fighting with each other, probably behind the scenes, and you're doing this and you're doing that and you're not talking. It probably happens. But to me, that is inexcusable that it's 3 weeks late. So, you know, but it had to happen. Things needed to be updated. It's a shame it took them so long. I have had a quick look through some of the questions on the mock exams. There's a couple of them that I genuinely think are quite badly worded. They refer to, I'm sorry if the person that wrote this question is here listening to the show, but you're supervising a girl guide at a jamboree and want to pass supervisory duties to a colleague. You must, and then there's 4 answers. Is the colleague licensed? Is it a colleague? You need more information on that. That's just, there's a few questions like that I don't really like the wording of those, so I'd be interested to see if they get revised or what the answers that people come back with are. I don't know, but I haven't seen the new syllabus and what their terms of colleague is. But colleague to me should be another licensed amateur.
I think they pick up on things like that. It just, on the exam, I do know from way back, they do assess these things, and where difficulties come up on our particular question, like you've just said, then they're flagged up and changed accordingly.
Yeah,
but yeah, it does happen.
Yeah, but this was just like the first couple of questions I read. I'm like, I haven't got time to read them all, but yeah, I was a bit. Someone might want to have a read of those before you release them.
They obviously, unlike the States, we don't publish our examination questions in a pool. So these questions have probably been put together in rather a rush as a mock exam, and you won't get these in the real exam.
Well, I have an example, Martin. We'll see what people think of this question then. So, and we'll see if we get this one right. So this is one of the tests. So basically, currently the exam question says, using a tool belt or working at heights will A, minimise the chance of dropping things, B, allow 2 hands to be used to complete the work, C, avoid the need to wear hard hats, or D, ensure repeated trips up and down the ladder. Any guesses on which one's the right answer?
I would say B is the best answer, but it's not technically true.
That's what the job you're doing is.
Anyway, that was just an example, wasn't it? I think the answer they were actually looking for was minimise the chance of dropping things.
I would have thought that was the one because that's the
safety
issue.
Question. Yeah, so basically, Martin and I both know that safety is one of the categories that they assess, and that's the only one really. Two of them make no sense at all. You know, why would it mean you not to wear? We need to wear a hat. Why would it mean that you don't need to wear a hard hat? And you know, ensuring trips from down the ladder. Well, that makes no sense. The two hands to be completed the work. Well, not really a safety answer. And also, actually, even if you're wearing a belt, you probably still need to have one hand on the ladder. So I think the answer is A.
When you're on the ladder, you're meant to have 3 points of contact.
Yeah, but it's a slightly ambiguous question, and you know, it's just that could well be that's similar to the real questions in the real exam. Sometimes there are two answers that are similar, and
two are wrong. One could be right, and one's more right.
Exactly. That's pretty much what you find multiple choice. But as per Martin's comments earlier, to be honest, I'm not. I mean, I accept that it does take a little while, especially if it's volunteers that are writing the questions for the exams to catch up. I don't have a major problem with that. But yeah, it's just because, I guess they are getting round to it. And yeah, they're sort of getting there. But yeah, there's quite a lot of discussion on. I'm actually a member of the groups.io group for the tutors for the UK amateur radio exams, and yes, it's quite a lot of conversation, shall we say, at the moment about these mock exam questions.
But why is it volunteers that write the questions, though? Why are these not? If it's an RSGB pushing the things out, why is it not an employed member of staff or an employed group of staff doing it? Why do they have to get volunteers to do it?
I suppose the RSGB's paid staff are there to administer the RSGB, so memberships, selling books, that sort of thing. It's Ofcom that have decided to change the syllabus after a consultation. So I guess this is not actually the RSGB's doing, although I'm sure they influenced that relaxing of some of the rules and increasing some of our privileges. But I guess ultimately, this is the RSGB is predominantly a volunteer organisation, and traditionally it's volunteers that. It's volunteers that write the questions, ultimately.
Yeah, as you say, Chris, the RSGB is in two parts. There's the commercial side that sells books and bits and pieces, and there's the volunteer side, and there's the volunteer side that's working on this. And on the examination questions, and just in case we've got a newbie that hasn't passed their amateur radio exam just yet, when you look at a question at a foundation level, the first thing in your mind is it a safety question? Because if it's a safety question, you go for this option. Then after that, it becomes, is it a licensing question? And lastly, is it a radio question? Your safety yes. and not causing interference are the most important thing you have to learn at foundation level, the equivalent of the technician license in the States. And the technical side of radio is seen as a very, very poor relation, but that's your last thing you need to worry about. So anyway.
Just emphasise that it's really important for the tutors to be up to date with the changes. One of the problems with our radio exam is you can I took mine when I was whenever it was, but I'd never have to touch it again for 40 years. And if you've got unless somebody's up to date, they're well behind, and they can't be teaching people what they did 40 years ago. That's gone. Life has changed. So they've got to be up to date with what these changes are all about.
Certainly, you have to teach the syllabus. Right.
Correct.
Yeah. Right. Bill, I know it's a UK story. Any thoughts on this one?
No, I agree with Leslie. Anytime the regulator makes licensing changes, there is a significant amount of effort that has to happen on the examinations, development side, and it is all volunteers. So I'm glad they were able to get this worked on, but it's a huge effort.
Certainly is. Right. Frank, have we left you anything to say on this one? I know it's a UK story.
I don't have much to add. It sort of reminds me of back in my university days doing curriculum reviews. If you do a poor job, you will really reap the poor benefits of it. So my hat's off to those who have done the review and have done the updates.
That's great. Right, moving to our next news story. A Californian radio club faces homelessness. Well, a bit of a shame, I'd say. Bill, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, it was an interesting article. This the Santa Barbara Amateur Radio Club has been using a facility owned by the city of Santa Barbara since 1975. It looks like they had meetings there and they had some equipment there, probably to help the city with public safety communications. That would be my guess. So hopefully they'll find another place. I mean, meeting locations tend to be relatively easier than equipment locations, because it doesn't really say this in the article, but I'm wondering if they had, for instance, maybe a repeater there, or they had a station that they used for, VHF, UHF, or maybe even HF. And that's where I think the real, challenge will be for this club is if they're there trying to serve a public safety agency and they don't have a place to put their equipment, that becomes a big challenge. Unless you go out and buy a van, which some clubs have done. I remember reading an article not too terribly long ago about a club that now has a portable communications van that they had fixed up with antennas and equipment in it. And it wasn't because their case wasn't because they were losing a location. It was because they needed to be mobile to help their served agency. So I hope they find something. There's not real details on how they're making out, but they have till July, and I hope it works out for them.
Yeah, so do I, Bill. Well, Frank, this is your side of the pond, so I'm going to pass it to you next, but it's a long, long way from where you are. It's right over the other side of the country, isn't it?
Well, it is, but I've actually been there, and there in Santa Barbara. It's a well-to-do place, a lot of fairly wealthy people there. The University of California at Santa Barbara is located there, so it's at least partially a university town. Here's what's a little bit different about the somewhat typical club that, hey, let us put a repeater here at your tower site. Okay, something happens. Sorry, your equipment's got to go. Unfortunately, that's happening, right and left to many clubs. And particularly in broadcast towers or towers that have been bought by, say, Crown Tower Company in the U.S. They're a big conglomerate buying up towers for cell equipment. Their engineers come in and say, hey, we need your stuff off because of wind load. All that's typical. It's unfortunate, but it's typical. What's a little different is that the Santa Barbara Amateur Radio Club was permitted to use the site owned by the city of Santa Barbara, but the club built an earthquake-resistant, climate-controlled modular structure for their equipment. Now, that's a little different in that they actually built something. They built the building that they now have to vacate, and I assume it will be torn down because they're doing this construction project. I don't think the club will go out of business. The president says it's an uncertain future. But on the other hand, I think they've gone public because they're not getting much love from the local officials. And perhaps this will generate some opportunities. They may have to build a new building, but perhaps it will be an opportunity for some civic clubs and others in Santa Barbara, which kind of have deep pockets, quite frankly, to help them. They are an earthquake-prone area in addition to wildfires. And they have quite the median house price. So it's an area that could really do with hams helping public safety do communications and stuff. So certainly my heart goes out to them. They've been around since 1975, which is almost a half century now. So they're a little different in that it's not just getting equipment off of a tower. They actually have a building that they paid the money to build. So it will change the equipment availability. The club will find a place to meet, but doing its operations, that's a bigger challenge.
Yeah, very interesting, Frank. Well, Chris, you're the club secretary of Sutton and Cheam, and we've had to rechange our meeting habits over the last few years. What do you think?
We have. And I guess each club's different. I mean, it sounds like this club, particularly being in California, where earthquakes and things are prevalent, their mission is to also help with public safety. Where we live is less of an issue, so that's not really a core part of, as a club, what we do. So we after COVID, well, during COVID, of course, there was lockdown. We weren't able to meet in person, so we moved to online meetings using virtual technology via the internet, and we've remained doing that ever since. So we actually don't have, well, we do kind of get together, but we have a full meeting every month, and that's online, and that's where a lot of clubs are moving to these days, not meeting in person. We do also meet or kind of informally every week at a scout hall, but that's not a kind of a talk. That's we have a monthly full meeting with someone to talk on some technical subjects, and it's a bit more formal. We also have a weekly meeting where we just get together and have a bit of a chat, and that we go to a scout hall, and we did have an issue recently where it was actually last week where we weren't able to meet because the scout hall was closed. There was an issue. The church, which is kind of the scout hall was part of, it's in the grounds of a church. There was some concern over the structural safety of the church spire after some recent high winds, and we weren't able to, while they were doing the inspection, we weren't allowed to use the scout hall. Thankfully now that's no longer an issue. They managed to figure that one out. But we were sort of thinking, what might we do? And we ended up just that particular night, we ended up going out to Epsom Downs, up to a local kind of spot meeting up in a big open space, and actually operating radios, which is a bit unusual for us as a radio club. So I think sometimes we have to adapt, and as Bill was saying, there may be other ways that this club can operate, maybe via some sort of mobile facility, or hopefully maybe finding some other premises. But there are ways, there are ways to get around these things, and certainly hopefully it won't mean the club will close. Hopefully they'll be able to continue and do the great work.
Yeah, well, let's hope they don't close. Leslie, you were telling us before we started recording, your club's had a couple of relocations. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's happened twice to us. In the UK, sort of London where I am, every single space that the local council can use to build housing, that they will look at the property very, very carefully. And twice it's happened where they've come along and said, no, you can't use the building anymore. We're going to put a block of flats there. So club has continued. Yes, so there is initial chaos and, oh no, we've got to move all the equipment again. And I'm still sorting out boxes of stuff that was from many years back. And but there is chaos, but eventually it does sort itself out. And it's just one of those things, unfortunately, and we've got no control over it. What we try and do is have good relations with the local authority as much as we can to explain what we do. And we've got a do coming up in June, so the local people know exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. So I wish them well and hope they find a new property soonest.
Yeah, let's hope they do. Martin, last words on this one?
It's sad to see, but as Leslie mentioned, it happens. Chris said we don't have premises. We never have had our own premises. We've hired a hall. There are options going forward: online hall hire, local meetups at Hills. If they built the building, I hope they're not going to be out of pocket. I would hope that if the authorities are saying you need to get out of here, I hope the authorities are compensating them fairly, if that's the case. Otherwise, if they specifically need a physical space, hopefully there are other groups, be they scout groups, church groups, whatever, that have space that they can work with to share it. I mean, the scout hall is only too happy to share with us in exchange for donations. So hopefully they'll get a something that fits the bill for everyone.
Well, let's hope they get themselves sorted in fairness. And as I say, losing your venue isn't the end of the world if you've got a strong club that they're all going to pull together. Moving to our next news story, and we've kind of discussed this a few months ago, and it's raised its head again. It's a US-based story, which is great, but the debate's reopened over AM radios and their future in cars. Now, I was talking to Frank earlier on this one. We both drive hybrids, and let's be honest, I'm not getting paid for saying this, but we both drive Toyota hybrids, different models, but same type of technology. I don't have any problems with noise on medium wave in my car. The biggest problem I have with medium wave in the UK is the stations are being switched off, but in the States, Frank, you said they ain't being switched off at that quick a rate. So what do you think?
Martin, we did talk about this earlier, and it seems to be an auto industry that has been, at least some of the manufacturers, not all, but some of them have been arguing, well, we just need to take AM radio out. And, that's okay, then why? And Tesla, which is probably the best known electric vehicle, they have testified in Congress, as I have read it, out of both sides of their mouth. On the one hand, they have said, well, we need to take AM out because, electric cars, there's interference, RFI. Then another Tesla representative told a different congressional committee in a hearing, no, our cars don't generate RFI. So what's going on there? I don't think any of us truly know. But on the supply side of the piece, that is the broadcasters, we have, as of March 31, 2024, we have 4,427 AM stations in the U.S., according to the FCC. We have 6,663 FM commercial, and we have 4,320 FM educational stations, one WGUR in Milledgeville. I had a hand in building back years and years and years ago. So we have a lot of radio stations. So AM is a small share of that. And yet the testimony before the U.S. House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Innovation, Data, and Commerce, they are discussing a bill in Congress, House Resolution 3413, the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act of 2023, and they have 247 members of the House across both parties who have co-sponsored that bill. And in the Senate version of the bill, there are 60 out of 100 who have endorsed that particular bill. It would have passed by consent resolution last year, except Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky was able to block it. This, according to the rules, just that one vote. So it can't be much of a cost issue to add or subtract AM radio. Martin, you and I have AM radio in our Toyota hybrids. I just got a relatively new, a 2024 hybrid RAV4 about 3 weeks ago, and it's the same level of noise, not that you hear at night or in the day on AM radio. Has nothing to do with the car, but enjoy listening to it. So is it that nobody listens? Well, that's not true. Now, they don't listen to AM for music, although there are music stations on AM radio. So it's a smaller share, but it's also part of our emergency broadcast system and part of public service, particularly in federal national parks and on some highways where there are things happen. There will be signs tuned to this frequency. So why is it that there's all this hubbub and it's continuing? Now, here's one person's speculation. I know of no new vehicle where you get a satellite radio that you don't have a trial subscription already set up for Sirius XM. I'm a subscriber on 2 vehicles and a house radio. So, gosh, is there lobbying by the satellite industry to let's stick a torch at least to AM and to terrestrial radio? I have no evidence of that, but there's something going on that is pushing this, and Congress is getting enough heat from both federal agencies, from emergency and public service, and consumers to say, keep my AM radio in my car. So they're holding hearings.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing you were telling us all this. And as I say, both you and I drive hybrids, and I've never noticed any difference in when I'm on AM. So a big difference in the UK, because a lot of AM stations are being shut down in the UK. But for your part of the world, I don't see it as a problem. Bill, still your side of the pond. What do you think?
I agree with a lot of what Frank says. Chris actually posted another article that he found on Motor Trend as well, which we'll put a link in the show notes on icqpodcast.com, that talks about it. And reading this article, in addition to the one that we posted, I come up with an alternative theory, Frank, and that is the cellular phone companies have been lying continuously for decades about see the shining sea cell phone coverage. And the automakers are trying to push us to internet radio, but there's not internet everywhere where you drive. And so, because there's no cell phone service everywhere. So I think that is part of that's my theory as to why they want to keep AM radio around, is it's a critical piece in our emergency warning systems. It's a critical piece in our traffic safety, systems, where they put up, information about, road construction or, large scale, long-term accidents. They'll put that on the low power AM station that as you're driving along, you can just tune into that station and hear what's going on. So that's my new theory as to what's going on. Because it's kind of odd that this has so much support in the U.S. Congress so far. So it's very unusual, very unusual.
It is, and you have a great alternative there. I've just read while you were talking. I've just read over the link that was put in there, and because we don't know, but it's odd that the industry is positioned itself as it has. And there's a lot of support in Congress. Yep.
And the article has in here National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, FCC, Department of Transportation, Government Accountability Office, Federal Emergency Management Agency. It's like there's a lot of stuff here they're expecting everybody to have access to AM radio in their cars. So it's very interesting. Like I said, this one's popped up a few times now. We've discussed it, but maybe this will get through the House and Senate again. We'll see.
It's very interesting because I'll be over in a couple of weeks' time going to Dayton, and I wasn't planning to bring an AM radio with me, but I've got a radio that will work on AM. I need to switch it from 9 kilohertz steps to 10 because you have a different step in the States, but I may very well bring it over and see. And Chris, we might actually listen to some AM at odd times while we are driving.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to rent a car. We have no idea what radio it's going to have in it just yet, so we'll see when we arrive. Hopefully we'll have an AM radio. I'm not sure from this news story whether it talks about retaining an AM radio capability. So I don't know whether or not it's already legally required for manufacturers in the US to install an AM radio into cars, but certainly they're looking to keep that. And as Bill and Frank have both said, it seems to be very much the car manufacturers up against the federal government essentially here. So various agencies that are saying AM radio is an essential part of their emergency alerting infrastructure from one side to the car manufacturers. And in fact, this story from Motor Trend talks about various companies, Volkswagen, Mazda was on there, Tesla was on there, Jaguar, all saying that something like, well, for example, there's a quote here from Volvo. If Volvo cars had continued to provide AM radio, our BEVs and PHEVs, in other words, electric vehicles, would likely have experienced EMC disturbances, and this could result in poor performance. So, and it seems to be a similar story from the other manufacturers. So it seems to be very much the car manufacturers saying we don't want to use AM radio anymore or install them anymore because it's likely they're not going to work very well. Or maybe cost more money to perhaps provide the isolation required and the shielding required to stop the EV components from causing AM interference. We all know that AM is more susceptible to interference and poor quality audio than perhaps FM. Here in the UK, we also have, and in Europe we have DAB, digital audio broadcasting, I think it stands for. And if I wanted my car has that and AM and FM, and I have to say DAB. With the digital service, you don't get the crackling; it just goes off. And I'll be honest with you, a DAB in my car goes off a lot, so I'm not convinced that actually it's any better for reception than some of the analog modes. But yes, it seems very much to be car manufacturers against the government, and we'll see where that bill goes. But yeah, it's interesting. And like you say, Martin, when we arrive in the States, we'll see if our car comes with AM. I imagine from experience, and I'm sure Bill and Frank will confirm, a lot of cars have satellite radio. Certainly in the past when I've been to the States and rented cars, tend to get the satellite radio service built into the vehicle. So yeah, it will be interesting to see where how that one progresses.
Yeah, certainly will. And you mentioned DAB, didn't you? You're definitely trying to run t'other.
Have I set him off? So have I used the key word now?
Look, Martin, we're talking about AM and in the States. Over to you, Martin.
Well, you mentioned we talked about this story in the past. To us in the UK, it's not really an issue because the three companies that own the majority of radio stations, in the UK, BBC, Global Radio and Bauer Media, are pretty much switching the AM transmitters off. We have some stations on AM, hospital stations, a couple of foreign language stations, Carolina still on AM, but mostly AM here is disappearing. I accept it's a bigger thing in America for the reasons that people have mentioned. It was talked about, electronic cars causing interference. I have a hybrid car. Again, it's a Toyota, not sponsored. I've never had any problems receiving AM aside from the fact that the transmitters are genuinely being switched off, and you can find YouTube videos of the transmitters being turned off. If that was the case, I refer to the stupid sticker that appears on lots of electronics that says this device must not create interference, but must accept interference, including that which will result in undesired operation. I've mentioned this is a stupid sticker before, but if the cars are electronically quiet and the radios reject interference that they don't want, well, there's half your problem gone. Is there drive? I wonder if there's drive from the radio stations. And the reason I say this, AM transmitters cost a lot of money to run, not just in the power, because these things run hundreds of kilowatts, but the land required for the massive antennas, tower maintenance, the crews that operate the transmitters, with people streaming on their phone. And I know we've talked about there's a lack of internet in a lot of parts of the country. I forget who it was. It might have been you I was talking to. Someone said to me that they were essentially they're transferring the cost of the transmission to the listener. So if the radio station doesn't have to pay to run their 100 kilowatt transmitter anymore, and every listener is just paying for data on their phones, that they're just listening. A lot of people get unlimited data or stupid amounts of data. Then that's a massive saving to the broadcaster as well. Yeah, it could be Sirius or other satellite type services. Yeah, Chris mentioned the dreaded DAB. Yeah, my DAB cuts out. In fact, I've got a dash cam in my car, and I installed it, and it completely obliterates DAB. Like the radio just came up no signal. I honestly thought there was a fault with my radio, and after a lot of toing and froing, I worked out that it was the dash cam that did it. If you unplug it, the stations come back. It's mounted away from the DAB aerial. I don't know what it is, but I'll be honest with you, everything that's on DAB, you can pretty much find it on FM anyway, and it sounds better on FM. So it didn't really worry me. But yeah, I'd be interested to see. But being that AM is big in the States, I hope it stays for many more years.
Well, so do I. Well, I'm going to own up. I bought an AM radio kit from an auction site, not because I want an AM radio, medium wave AM radio particularly. What I wanted to do with it was turn it into a training aid. And as I'm going to make it for the kit, and I might actually do a feature on it at some point in time, because in fairness, you've got to have your brain switched on when you get this thing. I mean, everything was in Chinese, so I had to do the conversion from Chinese to English. And an IF transformer, they called it a midweek whatever that was, on my translator. So I know what it was, but I wanted to use it for a bit of experiment and showing students stuff. But as I say, AM, I think it's, as I say, from the States, still got life. Leslie, last words on this one?
I've been listening with interest, Martin. Slightly different in the UK, and I think everyone's alluded to that. And the cost of running an AM station is sort of prohibitive now. So, yeah, they are closing down. But what people are saying and how it's working in the States, I think it's the way politics works, and we will never see the true picture. But hey, see what happens.
Yeah, certainly, Leslie. See what happens is probably the best thing. Moving to our last news story. Hams prepare for SOS Radio Week. Now, this is the Royal National Lifeboat Institute having their fundraising week. A number of ham stations will be operating, but the people that do our lifeboat service around the UK are a charity, which always surprises me, but they will be supported by a number of amateurs who will be out running special event stations for them. So, let's go to you first, because you haven't been first yet. What do you think?
I mean, it surprises me that these are charities that are literally running life-saving services. It's like the air ambulance and things. Why is this a charity? Why is this not government funded? I mean, is there a Coast Guard at all that is part of, that is funded centrally, and then the RNLI and things just back things? I don't know. I know you can call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard, but yeah, it does surprise me that they're charities, but they are exceptionally good charities. They are very well worth supporting. And even if you don't go out on a boat, you never know. You might be on a beach or on a pier, and you actually fall off and get swept out to sea. You might need their services, so do support them. Yeah, it looks like there's a number of special event stations going to be on the air, raising publicity and stuff for them. So listen out for them and give them a call.
Yeah, certainly do. Chris, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it is a bit of a strange one in this country that the service that provides that vital safety service to people at sea and in rivers are entirely voluntary, don't get paid, and have to raise money for everything they do. So all the lifeboats themselves, all the equipment, all the everything they use, the whole operating cost is all done from people donating money rather than being funded by taxation. Now, I think the difference between the RNLI, and I'm not an expert on this, and the Coast Guard are a government agency, and they essentially coordinate rescues. So if you see somebody at sea having in distress, or you are yourself in distress, you can contact the Coast Guard either over the phone or over the radio, over the marine band radio, and they will coordinate your assistance. And that's either from other ships nearby that may be able to go and assist, or by calling out the RNLI to send out a lifeboat. So they are a paid service, and they are paid for by our taxation. But no, it is great that we're having this particular radio week to really celebrate the fact we have this and recognise the fact we have the lifeboat service. Hopefully it helps to raise some funds for them. They are stationed all around the UK, not just at sea, but also I know that until the River Thames in London, the RNLI, they cover to kind of the kind of safety services there as well. And I know they do some great work. So it's great that we have these people that volunteer, and I wish them all the best.
Yeah. Well, Leslie, you and I, and Chris predominantly live inland, but as Chris was saying, they also do inland waterway help as well, don't they?
Yes, we've had some volunteers at work that were part of the RNLI, and they could have been called out. I don't know what their notice period is, but it's like they got to be at the boat. I think there was they were stationed down Clacton Way. So this is all about raising awareness, raising funds, and I wish them all the very best. And it's getting people aware of what's occurring. There is a thing about charities and companies and being beholden to government money, which I'm never too keen on, because you lose your own steer, if you like. If you take somebody else's gold from the government, then you're beholden to what they say. So it's just the way it is at the moment, and I wish them all the best, and I hope it's very successful.
Yeah, on that one. So do I. Now, Bill, I know this is one of these UK stories, but you were saying that over in the States, the Coast Guard is actually government funded.
Yes, they are. So I'm not aware of a similar volunteer organization over here. I'm not saying there isn't. I'm just not aware of one, and I'm not near the coast, so I won't hear stories on the news. But there are just radio related. There are 39 stations registered so far for the SOS Radio Week special events, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stations right now as we're recording on the air. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them are on FT8. One's on sideband. I'm not sure where this other one is. They don't have a spot out there, but there's stations out there, so go work them. It's a special event station. Go work them, and it's good that they're trying to raise awareness, and hopefully they'll get some donations.
Well, let's hope they will, mate. Frank, have we left you anything to say on this one? I know it's a UK story.
Yeah, it's something I think our U.S. listeners will benefit from, especially. We tend to think about our sea areas, Coast Guard, government, part of military or Homeland Security, that sort of thing. Inland, I live on a big reservoir, a big lake, and there's actually a private company just nearby, just a stone's throw from where I'm sitting right now, that they go out and get you if your motor stalls or you run out of gas or whatever. And it's a fee-paid service. And they have gotten involved when there's been some suspected drownings involved and things like that. Of course, you have the government come in on those too. So this is another element where amateur radio steps in and does some good stuff. And I see that as the real upside to this. And, we can talk about how different services for the public are handled in different countries, and all that's well and good. But it's a given situation in which the UK hams have organized, and they continue to contribute for safety, and they just need a little help financially. So I hope they get it.
Yeah. Well, that's a good one, guys. And as I say, I think we're all appreciative of the Royal Lifeboat Institute, and I think they do a brilliant job. And thanks to the hams for doing special event stations to raise awareness. Right, let's find out what the guys have been up to since the last time we spoke. Bill, I was very naughty and didn't check to see if you had a hard stop, so I'm going to let you go first.
I appreciate that, because I do have a hard stop here in a few minutes, but timing worked out well. Since the last time we talked, I worked a few soda stations. I worked a POTUS station. I worked 3 stations during the solar eclipse QSO party. And I ran a whisper beacon for like 12 hours on the Raspberry Pi here in the KX3 during the solar eclipse. The solar eclipse here in central Pennsylvania was overcast. Got a few good shots of it when the clouds thinned out a little bit, but not anything to really write home about. I was at 92% of totality where my location is. Reverse engineer that if you're really bored to find out where in Pennsylvania I am. But 92.0 actually was right on the dot. But anyway, it did get dark. Did not get as dark as the folks in totality. I did not notice a temperature change. However, some of the folks I worked with did go up to New York State and out to Erie, Pennsylvania, and they were able to actually notice a temperature change during the totality, which was interesting. So I submitted the FT8, or not the FT8, the Whisper log information so that data gets into the HamSci database, and we'll see what kind of information they will come out with this time based on that data, which is always very, very interesting to me. Likewise, Martin mentioned at the beginning of the show, been out hiking since the weather is nicer with the kids. And the main reason is I'm trying to get back in the backpacking soda shape so I can activate some summits here. That's the goal for the summer. I want to do a few soda summits, but I need to get back to hiking with a little bit of weight on me so I can carry my pack up on the side of the mountain. And my knee injury is healing well, so I'm able to actually get around now. It's been a long over a year on that, so that really took the wind out of my outdoor ham radio fun. So I'm also working on that as well. Back to you, Martin.
Well, it sounds like you had a lot of fun, Bill, which is what it's all about. So, we're trying not to walk you too far in a couple of weeks' time. And I did say that we pop by the HamSci stand at Dayton and say hi to the guys. They've invited us over to say hi. So we will pop in and shake a few hands and have a chat with them. So good one, Bill. Frank, what have you been up to since the last time we spoke?
Well, I'm nowhere where Bill is in terms of chasing DX, but and I'm only halfway to DXCC. But I did get Rwanda and Scotland confirmed in Logbook of the World, FT8, of course. So I was kind of glad to get those out there. Well, I'm still working on the Camera Light tripod portable vertical antenna, taking a little tripod and adding some fittings on it and a 17-foot stainless steel whip. About halfway through, I'm going to compare using standard radio wires versus the magic carpet that's gotten real popular on YouTube. But I'll be using Faraday cloth, and we'll see how much Faraday cloth does it take to match what you get from the standard radio wire. So that will fold down to be about 18 inches in length, small pack to go with a portable rig. So that's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying doing that. Been waylaid just a little bit because of weather. I've also got a couple of assembly kits, not a whole lot of soldering involved, but putting things together. Been sitting around for almost 2 years now. I got the Kiwi SDR a couple of years ago. It's the Kiwi SDR 1. Now the 2 model is out, but I don't have one of those yet. Got that put together, just really slick as it went together. It's online, but it's on my internal LAN at the moment. I'm testing it, and I haven't put it out on the internet yet. When I do, I'll put that on my blog at k4fmh.com and put it into the Kiwi SDR map. I also got another little small radio put together, Hermes Light 2. I ordered the Plus board from Robert Entwistle and added that. It adds local microphone and a headset or speaker and some other things like a pure signal port. If our listeners aren't familiar with pure signal, it's a particular rendition of pre-distortion technology that will help keep you from splattering your signal. And you can like Flex Radio and Anon and a number of others on reception have brick wall reception filters, you can almost get there, if not totally get there, with pure signal technology, which takes some of your transmitted signal through a sampler, and it's good to have a variable signal level on your sampler. I've built several of those, but I'm using one made by Clean RF, and it filters it back into the transmission system and allows you to really to keep from splattering. If our listeners are interested, Google Pure Signal on YouTube, and you'll get a lot of folks that'll show you how neat that is. So looking forward to getting that 5-watt Hermes Light 2 Plus on the air and adding it to a case and using it. It's a really kind of an amazing, inexpensive QRP SDR. The current issue, May and June 2024, of the Canadian Amateur magazine, that's the Radio Amateurs for Canada, their QST and Radcom, it's got my first article from the final report on the 2021 RAC National Survey of Operator Activities. This first article is on the popularity of operating activities among Canadian amateurs, and I've got several more articles queued up that will be in the Canadian Amateur in successive months. An article on shortwave listening in Canada with some surprising results. It'll be in next month's The Spectrum Monitor magazine. Now, my friend Bob Whitty, K0NR, has written about this study and some of the findings that he found very interesting in his popular blog at k0nr.com. The full report is downloadable in PDF from my blog at foxmikehotel.com, and soon Radio Amateurs of Canada will have them at rac.ca. I'm delving into something that came out of that particular work, as well as an earlier story we talked about here on the podcast for the United Kingdom, and that is licenses by age. That's not something that you can get your arms around very easily, but I think Ofcom released a report a year or two ago that I was able to download, and we talked about it then briefly. But I'm going to look at population projections by age group for the U.S., Canada. I did that in that report I just mentioned, and the U.K. Why would I do that? Well, the declining birth rates in developed countries, which our listeners may have heard about in the general news media, it's going to result in fewer young people in each country. And the impact that having fewer young people in each country on amateur radio is fairly clear. Most of our efforts to recruit go along the lines of, hey, we need to get the kids involved, and that will tend to replace us aging baby boomers. Well, what if there are fewer of them to reach? There are going to be fewer young people as a market for recruiting. Now, what that's going to mean is we will have to get even higher recruitment rates than we do now to replace baby boomers as we collectively head to infirmity and silent key status. Once I get my arms around that, I'll put some numbers on those rates for each country and probably have something out on my blog at k4fmh.com. And finally, when this episode is out on Sunday, I will have served the previous day on Saturday as net control operator once again for a local bicycle ride that we have. It's the largest event that the city of Ridgeland, where I live, has for the recreation department, called the Century Ride. We use multiple repeaters and a number of hams out in the field. And along with the president of the Jackson Amateur Radio Club, Jim Armstrong, I serve as net control operator. And I'll have to admit, I kind of enjoy doing that because it's just a brief walk around the corner for me, Martin, and I don't have to get engaged in all the parking. I just walk down with my little radio and set up and do the netcom stuff, eat a nice meal provided by the people doing the Century Ride, walk home. Back to you, Martin.
Well, that sounds like fun, Frank, what you're going to do at the weekend. and sounds like you've been very, very busy. And I did download your document. Now, I'll be honest with you, I haven't read it because I only got it this afternoon. But I had a quick scroll through, and there's lots of pretty graphs in that, Frank. So I'm going to have to study it, but good one. Right, Leslie, what have you been up to since last time we spoke?
Well, there was, shall we say, I was, I'm just trying to find the right word. I was not active for a while for various reasons, but a lot better now. What I have been doing is that we've got two things coming up for the club. One's the Chingford Day Festival, which I've sort of had lots of discussions with the club on how we should do it. Basically, what we want to do is get the public involved, speak to the public, as opposed to just, shall we say, just with our backs to the public. And I've gone, no, we're not doing that anymore. So we're going to change the ways we do things on that. And I don't think in the past it's been productive. So that's one thing. And the other thing is we've got our camp coming up. So I've been trying to sort out lots of equipment and just trying to find things that are broken. And I work by lists, and other people do it ad hoc. So it's all fun and games, and I'm sure we'll get through it in time.
I'm sure you will, mate. I'm sure you will. And having a list is the important thing. Martin, you've been busy at work the last month or so, probably not much radio, but hopefully you've had a bit of fun.
The only radio really I've had much operating on is radio microphones. Pretty much what I do most days at the moment. Yeah, the shack's in pieces right now. I say it's in pieces. It's piled up, but I need to get some cables running, and I need to build a stronger table to put them on. So not really been on at home at all, to be perfectly honest with you. So most of my operations have either been on the talk group on just random D-Star reflectors. I have been on holiday. I had a listen round while I was on holiday. I did have a listen round on AM radio while I was on holiday, but again, most of the stuff is being switched off. Did have a couple of QSOs on 2 meters while I was away, just a couple of local people on the Isle of Wight, but not very much to say. I was away with my wife and my daughter, so I was spending time with them. The only other thing is my 4-meter transverter, I might have mentioned, failed some 14 years after I purchased it. It's had a hell of a lot of use. And so that's now gone off for repair back to the manufacturer. He was like, yeah, send it back. There's no problem. We'll check that out for you. So I need to chase it, but hopefully going to get that back soon. And maybe that will be an incentive to start building a little cubby to put the radio equipment in. I used to have a thought of, the more equipment you've got, the better. And I had all sorts of little gizmos and stuff. I was like, I don't use half this stuff. So now it's just like, I'm going to get the stuff that I actually want to play with, and that's where I'm stopping. But yeah, either way, at the moment, I don't have too much time to play radio.
Well, sounds like you enjoyed your holiday, which was the important one, and you'll be back on air, I'm sure. And I've missed you a few times on the talk group. Basically, my world's been turned upside down as well. So, but we're all getting there. Chris, what have you been up to radio-wise since we last spoke?
Probably not quite as much as the other guys, and probably more sort of club things. So we had a recent talk from Jim Bacon, who's an ex-BBC weather reporter and meteorologist, and extremely knowledgeable on that subject. He did a talk for us at the club around sporadic E, and it was extremely detailed and interesting. So, and I know, Frank, you've been in touch.
He has some great ideas in that talk.
That followed by our AGM, and for our sons, myself and Mr. Rothwell are still on the committee. So anyway, I did operate at the weekend. It was International Marconi Day. I did work a special event station or two, and I do have an idea for our club to hold a special event, but I'm going to hang fire on talking about that until maybe it's a bit more real, because it may fall through. And really what we're doing at the moment is just planning for our trip to Dayton. That's kind of what's coming up. And I can't believe it's only 2 weeks away. So the next episode we record will be the day before we fly off to the States. So it will be, in fact, sorry, that's not true. The next episode that goes out that I won't be on, the other team will be on, will be recorded the day before. So literally we are 2 weeks away from Dayton. We're coming around very, very quickly. We're really planning for that. It's kind of that followed by a bit of a road trip across the States. So that will be fantastic. And yeah, certainly at Dayton we'll be, looking out for any new announcements that are coming out to see if anybody's got anything to announce. That's where those things are talked about. So yeah, looking forward to that really. But apart from that, Martin, not a massive amount, I'm afraid, of radio stuff.
Well, at least you've been playing, enjoying yourself. And I've the other group I record a day early because we're flying on the record day. And just to depress you even more, we get back on a Monday, and 2 days later, this group's got a record session. So
possibly with jet lag, but okay.
Yeah. So we never stop. We never stop at ICQ. So there you go. Right, what have I been up to very quickly? Because I've been playing a fair amount. I've been playing a little bit on HF. I mean, in fairness, I don't do HF, but I've done quite a few. I worked some Marconi stations the other day from home. Okay, Italy's not phenomenal distance, but at least I managed to work a few, which was good. I've been playing with a couple of antennas I've been messing around with, and they, just to see how well they work. No, nothing definite on that. Have done 2 meters and 77s from the car like Martin does. When I'm out, I tend to have the radio on a fair bit. As Chris said, we had the club shut the Scout Hall a couple of weeks ago, and we were on Epsom Downs. I operated 4 meters with using our new licensing system allowed our new lady member of the club to make a couple of contacts. I worked Steve 2E0ZWZ on his way up. He was one of our club members. And then after that, I worked Ed M3NSY and John G3VHH. Really pleased to have a chat on 4 meters. It's I know the States don't have it, but if you ever get a chance on 4 meters FM, it's not a 5.9, thank you very much. Your minimum contact will be at least 20 minutes, often longer, but that worked very well. Like yourself, Chris, I went out with Edmund doing Marconi Day, and I'll explain a bit more a bit later because I'm going to do a roundup for the feature on doing Marconi Day Special Event Station. Doing session 8 of Smart Radio at the local library on Saturday, and I have Colin over. So Colin's going to have to go to the library, and with a bit of luck, my grandson, we're going to get him up there and let him have a look as well. So that should be good. And last but not least, something the club's doing, and the boys at the club are doing, 145 Alive is on Saturday, the 11th of May. So Saturday, 11th of May, there'll be lots of stations on. I believe it's between 1300 UTC and 1500 UTC. But guys, it's great fun. So if you're on earlier and you stay later, nobody's going to complain. There will be enough people around to talk to you. But the 145 Alive means you get 2 meters FM working, and get them out and get it working. It's a fun event. So kind of that's what I've been up to, and all being all, I think we've had a very busy one. Well, all that's left for me to do now is to thank the guys for turning up and having a chat with me tonight. I'd like to thank Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Thanks, guys. Another fun episode.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL.
It's been fun. See you soon.
Yeah, no problems, mate. I'd like to thank Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH.
Thank you, Martin. Glad to be here today.
Yeah, great to have you, Frank, as always. And Miss Leslie Butterfield, G0CIB.
Thanks for having me on, Martin. It's been a pleasure as always.
Yeah, it's always enjoyable as a fun thing. Bill Barnes, WC3B, has had to leave because he was on a heart stop, as we know. So all that's left for me to do now is say 73, guys, and we'll continue with the rest of the podcast. 73, guys.
73.
Cheerio.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com icq.org/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
Now it's time to have a look at the news in brief with me, Colin M6BOY. We start off with news that the SDRplay has updated their Spectrum Analyser software for the RSPs. It is version 1.2 and its new features and update compatibility with the RSP1B. So there's a link for you to check out for the latest tracking generator software that you can download for that device. So we'll put that link for you on icqpodcast.com. In the UK, the syllabus, the RSGB ham radio syllabus, has been updated to version 1.6. The major revision is compared to the previous one is the section of licensing and station identifiers is the biggie, where there's some changes in there. In section 7, under operating practices and procedures, some minor changes, and so, for example, explaining the suffixes regarding the suffixes area. So as I say, this updated syllabus will come into effect from the 1st of September 2024. And if you're lucky enough to be going to Dayton Hamvention this month, we would love to see you there. We're going to have a team of ICQ podcast presenters there wearing our lovely snazzy orange t-shirts, and we look forward to catching up with you at Dayton Hamvention. So make yourself available and come along and say hello, and hopefully your favourite presenter will be there, or so you can pass on the message to them if they're not there at the show, and we'd love to meet as many as possible at Dayton in a couple of weekends' time. Right, well then we're going to head up to our features episode, and it's having fun on Marconi Day. As always, hope you enjoy.
And now what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast. Hi guys, for this feature I wanted to talk about what happened on the 27th of April 2024. So, amateur radio world been celebrating Marconi Day, of Marconi's 150th birthday. Now, some of the Italian stations have been on all month, and I've been quite pleased to say that they're celebrating Marconi's birthday. However, I think the main day was the 27th of April this year. Now, I got the phone call from Edmund, or a couple of weeks or so before, saying, "Martin, any chance you can help me?" Well, he's a friend of mine, of course I can help him. So, he's actually a volunteer at Amberley Museum, down in West Sussex. So, I thought, well, it'll be a nice run out, why not? Let's go down, do a bit of operating, have a bit of fun. So, I went down to help Edmund. Now, the museum itself has two call signs. The first one is GB2 CPM, and that's pretty much used most of the year round. But once a year, one day a year, they use a G2 November Mike. And this is a call sign originally associated with a gentleman called Gerard Marcuse, who became a silent key in 1961. But a very interesting gentleman at that. So I got in the car and I trundled off down to help Edmund. Edmund had queried the people on the day that I was coming down to help him at the museum, and was it okay? And they said yes, and he signed me in as a guest, all great, and then the world went silly on us. Unfortunately, the museum turned around to me and said, because I'm not a volunteer and I haven't been on their induction course and I haven't done their health and safety course, I was not allowed to touch the radio. I did try and explain that I'd got an exact identical radio at home, and I'd also been licensed longer than Edmund, but nothing wrong with Edmund's ability, obviously, but, you know, I wasn't a complete idiot. But the rules stand that if I'm not a volunteer, I can't operate. And it was quite annoying for both Edmund and I, because Edmund specifically asked the question and was told specifically I could. Anyway, could have all gone rotten for us. But let's tell you what happened on the day. Well, the band conditions were terrible. Unbelievably terrible. The HF was pretty much dead. And we tried a few calls, or Edmund put a few calls out. And Edmund was going to operate on 20 and 10 metres. And we got down there because we've been told the 40 metre antenna was 40. When we got down there, we found that somebody had actually repaired the 40 metre antenna the night before. So we did try some 40 metre contacts, and throughout the day it was very, very patchy. There was hardly anybody on that we could hear. However, we went over onto 2 metres FM, and Edmund managed to work some people at the museum on 2 metres FM. Now, the museum's in a bit of a chalk pit, so it used to be called Amberley Chalk Pit Museum. So it's in a bit of a pit, so getting out on 2 metres is a little bit interesting, put it that way. But we had a few contacts on 2 metres, we had some on 40, 20, 10 and 2. And I think in all, although it was a quiet day on the bands, Edmund managed to get 25 contacts. Now, that was real fun. Now, what I will say is, I could have had the strop and had the hump and gone home and said, well, you're not letting me do anything, I can't do it, I'll go home. What I actually did was I decided to stay with Edmund and help him as much as I could, which meant when members of the public came round and saw what he was up to, I was able to tell them what he was up to and explain Marconi Day and explain things about amateur radio, which kind of worked well. So I spent a fair bit of time talking to a number of people. There were a lot of scouts and cub leaders there, and I explained to them that our new licensing change makes JOTA more interesting this year, and they were quite interesting. I spoke to a couple of people that got all excited when they saw similar pieces of domestic radio equipment and said, I'll get it out of the loft when I go home. And I said, no, please don't, you'll end up with a fireball. The older electronics that's been in your loft for 20, 30 years needs to be brought back up sensibly and renovated first if you want to keep it. So for safety reasons, please don't switch it on. So that worked, and I spent about 20 minutes talking to a lovely lady from America whose name was Karen, and we got chatting. She was asking me about amateur radio in the UK and what amateur radio was like in the States. And I told her I actually hold a US licence. We got chatting, told her I was going out to Dayton, and it turns out her husband's family come from Dayton. So, yeah, small world, but a great lady to talk to. And all in all, I think I had a real great time. I spoke to a number of volunteers, and the whole thing was, from an amateur radio point of view, although I wasn't allowed to operate, I spent probably the whole day promoting the hobby and giving information to people, which 2 or 3 on my way out the event thanked me for the advice I'd given them. So, recommendations. If you get caught that you want to do something at a museum or whatever, make sure you're able to do what you think you're going to do before you turn up. I think that's number one. And I don't blame Edmund, because he did ask. And that's the annoying thing about it. Number 2, it wasn't a waste of a day for me. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And in fairness, I will probably go back again and have a really good look at the museum. I think this museum would probably take you at least 2 days to go round. The physical site is 36 acres. There is a narrow gauge railway that runs from one end of the site to another. And there's also a vintage bus service that runs from the 2 ends of the site. So lots there to see. I mean, there's the radio and TV area where I was. They have an old-fashioned print shop. They have a telecoms museum part, a building with old telecoms gear, different phones and different GPO vans and all that sort of thing. Really, really interesting. They have an electrical items area, which is brilliant. And in fairness, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. So, okay, I didn't get much radio personally done, but I was one of Edmund's 25 calls because I did take a handy talkie with me and call him on 2 meters when he was on 2 meters. But all in all, a damn good day out, and I would suggest any of you, if you get chance or you want to be a volunteer at a museum or you want to volunteer at these places, it is very, very rewarding, and you do get a chance to speak to some very, very interesting people. I hope this was of interest.
Whether it's across the pond or over the channel, the ICQ podcast is international.
Herzlich willkommen in Deutschland.
Good evening.
73 de España.
By amateurs, for amateurs.
Well, everybody, I really hope you enjoyed our feature this episode on Marconi Day Fun, and certainly a lot of fun there for you, Dad, and enjoyment as always out operating.
Yeah, it certainly was, Colin. And as much as I enjoyed the day, I thought I'd pass it on that, you know, even if things don't go right, there's always a positive. You know, as long as you're a half full glass and not a half empty glass, person, you can have fun even when people try and stop you, Colin.
I'd always said you were a half cup person, right, whereas in a half a cup of coffee rather than a half glass, but we'll take the analogy as you say there. And that's not the only thing you've been up to recently. You're saying the club were up to an interesting event as well.
Yeah, certainly are, Colin. In the UK, we have kind of a special event goes on every now and again called 145 Alive. And 145 Alive is happening on the 11th of May this year, 2024, for those who might be listening in arrears. And it's a great day just to go out on 2 Meters FM, because everybody says nothing happens on 2 Meters FM. Trust me, on 145 Alive, it will be busy. It happens on Saturday, as I said, the 11th of May. It's between 1300 UTC and 1500 UTC. And I will be out with the boys from Sutton and Cheam, Sutton and Cheam Amateur Radio Society, probably using G7 SAC, the club call sign, Golf 7 Sierra Alpha Charlie, or Sutton and Cheam. So looking forward to that, Colin.
Oh, fantastic news. Now, we love to also hear about what you're up to in the hobby and your feedback on the ICQ podcast. We've had quite a bit of feedback over the last couple of weeks while we've been busy doing separate different things. So we're going to round this up and do a big question and answer section in our next episode 430 of the ICQ podcast. And in the meantime, if you've got any thoughts or feedback you'd like to give us, pop it into us and we'll include it in that big roundup that we're going to do in our next episode. Now, our next episode is quite unique in the fact that we'll be releasing that show from Xenia, Ohio for the Dayton Hamvention weekend, where myself, my dad, Chris Howard, Bill Barnes and Dan Romerchick will be in attendance at Dayton Hamvention this year. So please pop along and say hello. Hopefully it's one of your favourite presenters will be at the show. But if not, we'll pick up a message for your favourite presenter and pass it on for you as well. So please come along, say hello. Let us know, what you think about the show, what you're up to in the hobby, etc. We're always more than willing to chat to you and, as I say, find out exactly your passion and enjoyment in the hobby. So it'd be great to see as many people as we could at that show, Dad, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'm hoping so, and, I'm looking forward to it big time now. The closer we get, the more fun I think it's going to be. So look forward to seeing you all in Dayton.
Yeah, it's certainly a busy show, and we're certainly looking forward to it. Well, we'd also like to thank our monthly and annual subscription donors in keeping your ICQ podcast advert free. As we always say, if you've enjoyed today's show and got some value out of what we've spoken about today, we ask you to go to icqpodcast.com/donate, where say you can show your value for the show by popping on a financial donation to us, which helps us pay our way and keep our bills paid, and of course keeps us publishing your show for you advert free every fortnight. Now, the people who give us value as well, the people who join us for the News Roundtable, they give it their time, and as I say, they're very generous in that. And we'd like to thank Chris Howard, Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin Rothwell, Mike 0 Sierra Golf Lima, Frank Howell, Kilo 4 Foxtrot Mike Hotel, Bill Barnes, Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, and Leslie Golf 0 Charlie India Bravo for taking part in the News Roundtable. Many thanks, guys, for doing that for us. Well, believe it or not, this is the last episode for a few weeks where I can say the words. It's time to look after Mrs. B, make her a cup of tea, and maybe find her a treat, because next episode she'll be fending for herself.
Yeah, no, she won't actually. Interesting. Oh, yeah, you're dead right. Oh, I'm having my moment here, Colin. I tell you what, it's come through far too quick. Yeah, anyway, I'm going to sort Mrs. B out with a nice cup of tea and a nice chocky bicky.
I've got a plan. I'll make this promise. If anybody sends a donation and puts in the note, this is for a cup of tea and a treat from Mrs. B for while you're away in Dayton, I will arrange a delivery to her of a cup of tea and a treat for the release morning. How about that? So there's a chance for anybody who wants Mrs. B looked after while we're away in Dayton. Pop that line in your donation. Probably needs to be about a minimum of about £10 sterling. But as I say, if you send that donation and say that's for a treat for Mrs. B, I'll make sure she gets a cup of tea and a treat for when we release while we're in Dayton. How about that for being fair?
Well, that is. But, yeah, fine on my part. Otherwise, I've got to put the donation in, Colin. Hi.
Oh, right, well, come on. We've got to get bags packed. We've got to get recording gear in the bags. We've got to make sure we got clean underwear and make sure we're smelling nice for Dayton. So we've got to pack up our stuff now. So I'm going to bid you 73s and 73s to our listeners. And we'll look forward to seeing as many as we can in Dayton, Ohio in 2 weeks.
Yeah, 73s, guys. Have a good one. And we'll catch you soon.